September 12, 1944. Verneuil, Eastern France. Sergeant Walter Granger pressed his face against a broken mirror fragment no bigger than his hand and saw death approaching from behind. A Panther tank, 45 tons of German steel, closing at 25 miles per hour. His Sherman, outgunned and out-armored, had seconds to live. But Granger had something the enemy didn't, a stupid piece of glass that would rewrite the rules of tank warfare. In the next 15 minutes, his crew would destroy 6 Panzers without losing a single man. This is how a loader's insane mirror trick turned America's most vulnerable tank into a Panzer-killing machine. August 28, 1944. Motorpool, Saint-Dié-des-Vosges, Eastern France. Walt Granger sat on Kentucky Girl's turret, watching mechanics tear into her busted transmission. 23 years old, 3 months in France, 17 friends dead. She'll be ready tomorrow, the head mechanic called up. Maybe. Corporal Castellano laughed the bitter kind. Maybe means we're rolling out with a transmission that'll seize up the second we hit combat. You got a better option, Philly. Yeah, I could shoot myself now, save the Kraut's the trouble. Granger didn't laugh. He was staring across the motor pool at a destroyed Citroën, its body crushed by tank treads, but the rear-view mirror somehow intact, dangling from twisted metal. Hey! Granger jumped down, walked over. You guys see this? Castellano followed. See what a dead French car. The mirror. Granger carefully pried it free. 6 inches wide, chrome frame glass unbroken. Still works. Congratulations. You gonna check your makeup before we get shot? But Granger wasn't listening. He was thinking about 3 days ago. The Panzer IV that got behind their column. 2 Shermans destroyed before anyone saw it. Tommy Reeves burned alive in one of them, screaming for 30 seconds until he wasn't. What if, Granger said slowly, we could see behind us? Castellano stared. What? The Sherman's got a blind spot. 7 o'clock to 5 o'clock. Every Panzer commander knows it. That's why they keep flanking us, hitting us from behind. What if we mounted this mirror inside the turret, angled so the loader me can see rear approaches while I'm working? Walt, buddy. Castellano lit a cigarette. That's the dumbest shit I've heard all week. Is it? Granger turned the mirror over in his hands. Or is the dumb thing watching friends die because we can't see what's behind us? Silence. Castellano took a drag, exhaled. Okay, say it works. Say you can actually see something in that tiny thing. You really think a 6-inch mirror is going to stop a Panther? No, but it might let me see the Panther before it sees us. That's 3 seconds. 3 seconds to call contact, traverse the turret, get a shot off. 3 seconds, Castellano repeated. Against a tank that can punch through our front plate at 1,000 yards. 3 seconds is the difference between Tommy burning alive and Tommy going home. Granger headed back toward Kentucky Girl. I'm trying it. Command's gonna bust you for unauthorized modifications. Then they can court-martial my corpse. Granger climbed into the turret mirror in hand. Because if this works, I'm not dying blind. Fesukak bit chua. 98% dialogue action. 0 poetic description. Immediate conflict mechanical plus tactical. Emotional stakes. Tommy's death. Forward momentum, every sentence. Final verdict, 6% mừng. Nội dung lịch sử 9/10. Xuất sắc kể chuyện YouTube 5/10. Cần cải thiện đáng kể để đạt 8/5/10 cho YouTube. 1. Cat 40% mô tả cảnh. 2. Tăng dialogue lên 40%. 3. Thêm 3 mini climaxes. 4. Compress thinking, waiting scenes. 5. Mỗi 300 words phải có action beat hoặc emotional payoff. Bạn có muốn tôi viết lại toàn bộ part 1 theo chuẩn? YouTube Optimization không RSAYTS. Bạn là một biên kịch lịch sử chuyên nghiệp và người dẫn chuyện phim tài liệu trên YouTube. Viết lại cho tôi. Phần 1/2000, 3000 từ. Viết lại để đạt 10 điểm và bổ sung tiết tấu câu chuyện nhanh, sửa lời AI, không mô tả cảnh, tập trung vào hành động, cảm xúc và tâm lý nhân vật viết để phù hợp với thuật toán YouTube. Dễ đề xuất cho kịch bản YouTube lịch sử kể chuyện dài 1 năm tiếng. Part I, The Broken Reflection. 2. 845 words. August 28, 1944. Motor pool outside Saint-Dié-des-Vosges, eastern France. 130 hours. Walt Granger pressed his back against Kentucky Girl's turret and lit his last lucky strike. His hands shook, not from fear, not anymore, from loading 347 shells in the past 11 days. His right shoulder had a permanent bruise the size of a dinner plate, where the breech recoiled against him. 23 years old. A loader in the 3rd Armored Division. Expected lifespan in combat, 6 weeks. He'd already survived 7. Granger, get your ass down here. Corporal Jimmy Castellano stood below, covered in transmission fluid, holding a wrench like a murder weapon. What's the verdict? Granger called down. Verdict. The verdict is we're fucked. Final drive's shot. Transmission's leaking like my Uncle Sal after 12 beers. And command wants Kentucky Girl rolling in 18 hours. 18 hours. We got intelligence reports Panzers moving up from Nancy. Yeah, well, maybe you should tell that to this piece of shit, Sherman. Castellano slammed the wrench against the hull. The clang echoed across the motor pool. Meanwhile, Tommy Reeves is in a body bag because his tank couldn't see the Panzer that killed him from behind. But hey, at least his transmission worked great. Granger climbed down. Didn't say anything. Couldn't. Tommy had been his friend since basic training. 3 days ago, Tommy's Sherman, they'd called her Dallas Rose, took an 88mm round through the rear engine deck. The Panzer IV had approached from 7 o'clock, perfect blind spot, and fired from 300 yards. Dallas Rose's crew never saw it coming. The engine caught fire first, then the ammunition. Tommy screamed for 27 seconds. Granger counted every one. Sorry, Castellano said quietly. That was true. Granger dropped his cigarette, crushed it under his boot. Every word was true. They stood there in the August heat, surrounded by wounded machines. 17 Sherman tanks in various states of repair, half-tracks with blown axles, jeeps riddled with shrapnel holes, and everywhere mechanics screaming at seized bolts and broken parts. The smell was oil cordite and latrine trenches that had been dug too close to the motor pool. You know what kills me, Granger said. We know the blind spot exists. Every tanker knows. Every commander knows. Hell, every German tank commander knows that's why they keep exploiting it, but nobody fixes it. They just say maintain better formation or coordinate with infantry support. Like that helps when a Panther's already behind you lining up the shot. So what are you going to do? Write a letter to Ordnance. Dear Sirs, please redesign the Sherman's vision blocks. Love, Sergeant Walt Granger, currently getting shot at. Granger wasn't listening. His eyes had fixed on something across the motor pool. A destroyed French civilian car. Citroën may be hard to tell after artillery had crushed the body. The doors were blown off, windows shattered. But the rear-view mirror somehow still hung from twisted metal inside. Jimmy. What? That mirror. Castellano followed his gaze. You hit your head. We talking about French cars now. But Granger was already walking over boots, squelching through mud mixed with motor oil. The Citroën was a tomb. A child's shoe in the back seat. Photographs scattered across blood-stained upholstery. A family smiling somewhere before the war. A woman's purse, contents spilled. Lipstick. A compact. Keys that would never open a door again. He carefully pried the rearview mirror free. 6 inches wide. 4 inches tall. Chrome frame glass intact. Someone had adjusted this thousands of times. Checking their appearance. Watching for traffic. Living an ordinary life. Granger, seriously, what are you doing? Granger turned the mirror over in his hands. Solving a problem. With a rear-view mirror from a dead family's car. With geometry. He started walking back toward Kentucky Girl. The Sherman's blind spot is approximately 120 degrees from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock. The loader's station. My station has a hatch but no periscope. When we're buttoned up in combat, I'm loading shells blind to anything behind us. But if I mount this mirror at the right angle... Wait. Castellano grabbed his arm. You want to mount a car mirror inside a tank. Not just mount it, position it so I can see rear approaches while I'm working. 45-degree angle, maybe less catching light from the loader's hatch and the rear vision block. I could see behind us without leaving my station, without interrupting the loading sequence. Castellano stared at him. Really stared. Walt, brother, that's the single dumbest idea I've heard since Henderson tried to fry eggs on the engine deck. Why? Why? Because it's a fucking car mirror in a tank. Command will court-martial you for unauthorized modifications. Tommy died 3 days ago because we couldn't see behind us. That stopped Castellano. His face changed. Steve Morrison died 2 weeks ago. Same reason. Panzer 4 6 o'clock approach. Danny Kowalski lost his legs last month when a Panther flanked his Sherman and he had to bail out through the floor hatch. I load shells next to a 75mm gun in a tank with armor that a German 88 punches through like aluminum foil. I'm already gonna die, Jimmy. The question is, do I die because I got outfought or because I was too stupid to look behind me? Castellano pulled out a cigarette, lit it with shaking hands. Okay. Say it works. Say you actually see something in that tiny piece of glass. You really think 3 extra seconds is going to stop a Panther? No. But 3 seconds lets me call contact. 3 seconds lets Morrison traverse the turret. 3 seconds lets you acquire target and fire first. The Germans beat us on armor, firepower, and speed. Our only advantages are numbers and coordination. But coordination requires information. And right now we're fighting with one eye closed. The cigarette hung from Castellano's lip. You're actually serious. Tommy burned for 27 seconds, Jimmy. I counted. Next time it could be us. So yeah, I'm serious. Command's gonna bust you. Then they can bust my corpse. Granger climbed into Kentucky Girl's turret, mirror in hand. The interior was cramped hot, stank of sweat and gunpowder residue. His loading station was on the right side, ready rack with 18 shells, floor rack, with another 45 and barely enough room to move. He'd spent 200 hours in this space since Normandy. Knew every rivet, every stain, every worn spot on the metal. He tried positioning the mirror different ways. Too steep and he saw only the turret ceiling. Too shallow, and the angle was useless. He needed to catch the light coming through the loader's hatch, bounce it so he could see behind the tank while standing at his normal position. After 15 minutes, he found it. Bent a piece of wire from the commo set, attached it to a turret stanchion, angled the mirror exactly 43 degrees. The reflected image was small, slightly distorted, but it worked. He could see approximately 120 degrees of rear arc without turning around. Holy shit, Castellano said, climbing in behind him. He looked through the mirror. You can actually see back there. Not perfect. Image is compressed, reversed, but it's better than blind. Morrison's got to see this. Lieutenant Daniel Morrison climbed into the turret 10 minutes later. He was 26, from Houston, had taught high school math before the war. Sharp, practical, didn't tolerate bullshit but respected initiative. Granger, he said slowly, examining the mirror installation. Tell me you didn't just desecrate a French civilian's car for this. I gave them a chance to help kill Nazis, sir. I think they'd approve. Morrison looked through the mirror, looked at the angle, looked at Granger. This violates approximately 7 regulations regarding tank modifications. Yes, sir. Ordnance will have a fit. Probably, sir. And you think this'll actually work in combat? Sir, the Panzer IV Max is out at 25 miles per hour. The Panther hits 30. We're lucky to get 24 on good road. We can't outrun them. We can't out-armor them. Their guns punch through our front plate while our 75 needs side or rear shots to penetrate. Our only advantage is seeing them before they're set. This mirror gives us that 3-second warning. 3 seconds to reorient, get our frontal armor toward them, maybe get first shot at their weaker side. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Outside, a mechanic was screaming about a seized bolt. Somewhere distant, artillery rumbled. All right, Morrison said finally. We tested on tomorrow's patrol. If it works, it works. If it gets us killed, well, we were probably dying anyway in this coffin. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet. Thank me if we're alive tomorrow night. August 29th, 1944. 0620 hours. Kentucky Girl rolled out as part of a 4-tank column. Reconnaissance patrol along the Nancy St. Dié Road. Intelligence said German forces were withdrawing east. But intelligence also said Normandy would be easy. Granger stood at his loading station, hands on the ready rack, eyes flicking between his work and the mirror. The reflected image was disorienting at first. Reversed space. His brain needed time to translate the information correctly. But gradually, like learning to drive using only mirrors, his perception adjusted. They were buttoned up, hatches closed. Summer heat turned the interior into an oven. 112 degrees. Sweat dripped off. Granger's nose pooled in his boots. The engine roared. Tracks clanked. Every bolt and rivet vibrated. "Movement 2 o'clock, 300 yards, Morrison called out from the commander's cupola. The column slowed. Granger checked his mirror. Nothing. Wrong angle for 2 o'clock. But as they rounded a gentle curve in the road, there. A dark shape. Movement among trees. 7 o'clock. Maybe 400 yards back. "Contact rear left," Granger shouted. "Vehicle in tree line, 7 o'clock. "You sure?" Morrison snapped. "Yes, sir. Saw it in the mirror. Driver hard. Left gunner. Traverse left elevation 0. Kentucky girl spun on her tracks. 30 tons pivoting in 5 seconds. Granger grabbed the turret traverse handle to steady himself, eyes still on the mirror. The shape was moving now, emerging from tree line. Target acquired. Castellano's eye was pressed to the gun sight. Panzer IV, range 400. Identified. Morrison confirmed through his periscope. Fire. The 75mm bucked. The breech slammed back. Granger's ears rang despite the headset. He watched through the mirror as the armor-piercing round covered 400 yards in less than a second and punched into the Panzer's side hull. The German tank shuddered. Smoke vomited from his hatches. Then the ammunition cooked off and the turret lifted 6 feet in the air on a pillar of orange flame. Silence. Just the engine idling. The radio crackling. "Kentucky girl, this is Able 6, the company commander's voice. "What the hell just happened? We didn't call contact." Morrison keyed the radio. "Able 6, Kentucky girl. Hostile destroyed. Single Panzer IV attempted flank attack from 7 o'clock. We acquired via new observation equipment." "New equipment? Field modification, sir. Appears effective." "Effective? You just killed a Panzer that my lead tank didn't even see. What kind of modification are we talking about?" Morrison glanced at Granger, who was already loading the next shell with shaking hands. The smell of cordite filled the turret. Granger's shoulder throbbed where the breech had recoiled against it. But they were alive. Tommy's Sherman died because they couldn't see behind them. Kentucky girl lived because of 6 inches of French car mirror. "I'll explain at debrief, sir," Morrison said into the radio. They returned to the motor pool at 1840 hours. By 1900, word had spread. Corporal Eddie Kowalski was waiting when Granger climbed down. Eddie's tank, Poughkeepsie Pride, was parked 3 spaces over, fresh from repairs. "Granger, is it true you got a magic mirror that sees Kraut's, not magic, physics? Jimmy says you spotted a Panzer IV from behind the turret. Says you saw it before Morrison did. Mirror gives rear visibility, that's all." "That's all." Eddie laughed, but there was no humor in it. "My loader is blind to everything behind us. Last week we almost got smoked by a Panther we never saw until it fired." "That's all." Might as well be a miracle. "Can you make one for us?" By August 31st, Granger had scavenged mirrors from 6 destroyed civilian vehicles and installed them in 5 other tanks in the platoon. Each installation was custom. Different Sherman variants had different interior layouts. He learned to adjust for these variations, finding optimal angles for each loader's station. He taught the other loaders how to use them, how to quickly interpret the reversed compressed image, how to call out contacts accurately without panic. The tanks started calling them Granger mirrors. The name stuck. Granger hated it. "It's not heroic," he told Castellano on September 3rd. "It's just solving a problem with available materials." Brother, in this war, just solving a problem is the difference between a name on a memorial and a name in a history book. Take the credit while you're alive to hear it. But credit meant attention, and attention meant questions. September 8th, 1944, near Rambervillers, 11:34 hours. 3 Sherman tanks equipped with Granger mirrors were rolling in column formation when Private Lucas Brenner, A loader in Texas Thunder caught something in his mirror. Sunlight glinting off metal. 800 yards back. 7 o'clock position. Contact rear, Brenner screamed into the radio. Possible armor 7 o'clock 800. The column halted. Commanders grabbed binoculars. There, in a sunken road partially concealed by brush, 3 German tanks. 2 Panzer IVs and a Panther, positioned perfectly for crossfire, waiting for the Americans to roll into the kill zone. The Americans reversed course, flanked around through a parallel farm road, approached the Germans from their exposed eastern side. All 3 Panzers destroyed in 4 minutes. 0 American losses. The incident report went up the chain. Battalion, regiment, division. September 10th, 1944, 15:20 hours. Lieutenant Colonel Warren Hastings, 3rd Armored Division Operations Officer, arrived in a jeep that looked like it had driven through hell, which it probably had. He was 42 West Point Regular Army, the kind of officer who'd seen his share of stupid ideas and wasn't impressed easily. He walked straight to Kentucky Girl. Granger was cleaning his station hands black with gun oil. "Sergeant Granger," Granger snapped to attention. "Sir, at ease, show me this mirror." Granger climbed into the turret. Hastings followed, moving with the efficiency of someone who'd spent time in tanks. He examined the installation, looked through the mirror, tested the angle, said nothing for 30 seconds. "You're aware this violates regulations regarding unauthorized modifications?" "Yes, sir." "You're aware that tank crews die because they deviate from doctrine?" "Yes, sir." "Also aware they die because Panzers shoot them from behind?" Hastings almost smiled. Almost. "How many tanks in your battalion have these?" 17, sir. As of yesterday. "Combat effectiveness?" "Anecdotal, sir, but consistent. Tanks with mirrors have spotted and engaged flank threats in 6 separate engagements over 9 days. Tanks without mirrors continue to be vulnerable. We've lost 3 Shermans in that period, none equipped with mirrors." Hastings nodded slowly. He pulled out a small notebook, wrote something. "I'm authorizing your battalion to equip all available tanks. I'm also recommending wider implementation to division. You understand what this means?" "Sergeant." "Sir." "It means if this works, if the data supports what you're claiming, you may have just solved a problem that's been killing American tankers since we landed in France. It also means if you're wrong, if these mirrors create some unforeseen tactical disadvantage, men die and it's on your head." "Understood, sir." "Good." Hastings climbed out of the turret. "Don't make me regret this, Granger." "No, sir." But as Hastings's jeep drove away, Granger felt the weight settle. Not pride, not satisfaction. Just the cold knowledge that the real test was coming. Intelligence indicated German forces consolidating for a major counterattack. When that hammer fell, when Panzers came in force, that's when they'd know if a 6-inch mirror was salvation or superstition. September 11th, 1944, 22:40 hours. Granger sat on Kentucky Girl's turret looking at stars. Castellano climbed up beside him, handed him a cigarette. "Can't sleep?" Jimmy asked. "Can you?" "Not since Normandy." Castellano lit both cigarettes. "You hear the briefing. We roll out at 0600. Verneuil Crossroads. Intelligence says Panzers are massing." "How many?" "At least 10, maybe more. Panzer IVs, Panthers, maybe a Tiger if we're really unlucky." They smoked in silence. Somewhere distant, an owl called. The night was cool, almost peaceful. The kind of night that made you forget there was a war. "You scared?" Castellano asked quietly. "Terrified." "Me too. But I'm less scared than I was 3 weeks ago, before the mirror. That's worth something, right?" "Ask me tomorrow night." "What if there is no tomorrow night?" Granger looked at him. "Then I hope the mirror saves someone else." They finished their cigarettes, climbed down, tried to sleep in bedrolls that smelled like diesel and fear. The next day was September 12th, 1944. The day a 6-inch piece of French car mirror would face its ultimate test. The day the numbers, cold, brutal mathematics of tank warfare would tell a story that echoed through decades of armored doctrine. But first there was dawn, and the rumble of engines starting, and the metallic taste of adrenaline coating your tongue like copper. Granger loaded his first shell of the day at 0547 hours. He wouldn't stop loading for the next 15 minutes. And when it was over, Kentucky Girl would be surrounded by burning Panzers, and Granger's hands would shake so badly he couldn't light a cigarette. But that's what comes next. September 12th, 1944, 0547 hours. Staging area outside Vernay. Granger's hands moved on autopilot check. The shell wiped the base, slided into the breech, stepped back. He'd done this sequence 463 times in combat. Muscle memory so deep he could do it blind, which was good because his mind was somewhere else entirely. "You're quiet," Morrison said from the commander's cupola. His voice crackled through the intercom, tinny and distant. "Thinking, sir. About, Tommy, Steve, Danny, all the guys who didn't make it because they couldn't see what killed them." Morrison was silent for a moment. Then, "Today we can see. That's the difference." But Granger knew better. Seeing didn't guarantee surviving. It just changed the odds. And odds were a cruel calculus when your life was the variable. The radio crackled. "All units able 6. Enemy strength estimated at 12 armor mixed Panzer IVs and Panthers. Possible Tiger in reserve. Our objective is to hold the western approach to Verneuil and prevent enemy breakthrough. Expect contact within 30 minutes. Able 6 out. 12 tanks against their 7. "Well," Castellano said, his voice tight, "at least the odds are better than Normandy. In Normandy, we had hedgerows to hide in," Driver Roy Henderson called from his position. "What have we got here? Open fields and a prayer." "We've got mirrors," Granger said. He checked his reflection in the small piece of French car glass mounted beside his station. In it, he could see the rear approach, the autumn morning light just starting to break through cloud cover. "That's more than we had 2 weeks ago." Granger's right. Morrison's voice carried the weight of command, the forced confidence that officers manufactured when they needed their men to believe in something. "The mirror gave us an advantage at Rambervillers. It'll give us an advantage here. Everyone buttoned up, safety's off. This is it." Kentucky Girl rumbled forward tracks, chewing mud, engine bellowing. Granger braced himself against the turret wall as they crested a small rise. Through the loader's hatch, still open for now, he could smell rain coming, mixed with diesel exhaust and his own fear sweat. 0612 hours. Contact, multiple contacts, 11 o'clock, range 1,000 yards. Morrison's voice snapped Granger's attention forward. Through the narrow gap of his hatch, he could see dark shapes emerging from tree line. Low profiles, angular turrets, Panthers. "Count 304 Panthers. Panzer IVs behind them can't get exact count." Granger's heart hammered against his ribs. 4 Panthers. Each one carried an 88mm gun that could penetrate a Sherman's front plate at 1,500 yards. Kentucky Girl's 75mm needed to get within 500 yards for a reliable frontal penetration, and even then it was a prayer shot. Side or rear armor that was the only real kill zone. All units spread formation, Able 3 and Able 5 flank right. Kentucky Girl Poughkeepsie Pride hold center. Texas Thunder cover our left. The Shermans spread out. Textbook tactics. Create multiple targets, force the Germans to divide their fire, look for opportunities to hit weak points. The theory was sound. The execution usually ended with burning Shermans. "Granger," Morrison said quietly, "watch that mirror. The Panthers will try to envelope us. When they do, I'll see them, sir. You better, because if you don't, we're all dead." 0618 hours. The first shot came from the German line, a Panther at 900 yards. The round screamed past Kentucky Girl's turret with a sound like fabric tearing. It hit a tree 200 yards behind them, detonating in a shower of splinters and dirt. "Jesus Christ!" Henderson yelped from the driver's position. "Steady," Morrison barked. "Driver, evasive maneuvers, pattern Delta. Gunner acquire target. Panther at 11 o'clock. Ranging." Castellano's eye was pressed to the gun sight, his hand spinning the elevation wheel. 800 yards. 750. Kentucky Girl lurched left then right, Henderson working the lateral controls like he was wrestling a mechanical bull. The engine screamed. Another German round slammed into the mud 20 feet away, showering them with debris. "Fire!" Morrison shouted. The 75mm bucked. Granger watched the tracer arc across the field and spark off the Panther's frontal armor. No penetration. The German tank didn't even slow down. Shit. No effect. Castellano was already adjusting. Reloading. Granger had the next shell in his hands before Castellano finished speaking. Slid it home. The breech clanged shut. Up. But Granger wasn't looking at the gun. He was looking at his mirror. Movement. 7 o'clock. Low and fast. Contact rear left. His voice cracked. 2 vehicles, 7 o'clock, 500 yards and closing. Confirmed. Morrison swung his periscope around. Panzer IVs. They're trying to flank us. Driver hard left gunner. Already on them. Castellano traversed the turret with brutal speed. The electric motor whined. The entire tank shuddered as they pivoted. Through his mirror, Granger watched the 2 Panzer IVs advancing in a staggered formation using a small depression in the terrain for cover. Classic flanking maneuver. Without the mirror, they would have gotten within 300 yards before anyone spotted them. By then, Kentucky Girl would have been dead. Range 400, fire. The gun roared. Through the mirror, Granger saw the lead Panzer IV take the hit on its right track. The tank slewed sideways, throwing a track crew already bailing out. Target load AP. Granger grabbed another armor-piercing shell. His hands were shaking now. Not from fear, from adrenaline so pure it felt like electricity in his veins. He slammed the shell home. Up. Firing. The second Panzer IV died trying to reverse behind cover. The shell punched through its turret ring. No explosion, just smoke vomiting from every hatch as the crew suffocated on burning propellant fumes. 2 down, Morrison was shouting into the radio. Kentucky Girl, 2 hostiles destroyed, but we've got more coming from... The impact threw Granger against the turret wall hard enough to crack ribs. The world became noise, a metallic scream that vibrated through every bone in his body. Smoke filled the interior, the smell of burning insulation. Someone was screaming. Was it him? We're hit! We're hit! Henderson's voice high with panic. Where? Morrison. Rear armor engine deck. Granger tasted blood. Bit his tongue when he hit the wall. Through the smoke, he could see the breech undamaged. The ready rack intact. The turret traverse still operational. They were hurt, but not dead. Can we move? Morrison demanded. Engines running rough, but yeah, we can move. Then move. Driver forward, get us hull down behind that ridge. Kentucky Girl lurched forward. The engine sounded like a dying animal, but it pulled them. Granger checked his mirror through the smoke. The German round had hit their rear engine plate at an angle penetrating, but not reaching the crew compartment. 6 inches higher, and the shell would have gone through the turret bustle, through him, through Castellano, through everything. 6 inches. The difference between alive and dead. 6:29 hours. They crested the ridge and dropped behind it, hull down, only the turret exposed. Granger's ribs screamed with every breath. He'd pissed himself at some point. Didn't remember when. Didn't care. Status, Morrison barked. Gun operational, Castellano reported. His voice was steady, but his hands shook on the controls. Optics intact, traverse functional. Loader. Ready, sir. Granger grabbed another shell. Got maybe 30 rounds left in the racks. Driver. Engine's smoking, but she's running. We can fight. Can't run, but we can fight. Morrison keyed the radio. Able 6 Kentucky Girl. We've taken a hit, but we're still in action. Engaged and destroyed 2 Panzer IVs. Multiple hostiles still active. Copy Kentucky Girl. Texas Thunder is down. Poughkeepsie Pride took a hit, but they're still fighting. We're at 4 operational tanks against 6 confirmed German armor. 4 against 6. Except one of those 4 was smoking and couldn't maneuver. The Germans knew it too. They'd smell blood and come for the wounded. Sir, Granger said quietly, they're going to try to finish us. I know. Morrison's voice was flat. Which is why we're going to use that mirror of yours one more time. They think we're crippled. They think we're easy meat. Let them come. And when they try to flank us, I'll see them. You better, Sergeant, because this time we don't get a second chance. 06:34 hours. The Germans came from 3 directions. 2 Panthers from the front using superior armor to bull forward. 1 Panzer IV from the right trying to exploit Kentucky Girl's immobility. And Granger watched his mirror 1 more Panzer IV circling wide to the rear, assuming the crippled Sherman couldn't rotate its turret fast enough to engage. Multiple contacts, Morrison called out bearings and ranges rapid fire. Gunner priority is the Panther at 11 o'clock range 600. Contact rear, Granger shouted. Single Panzer IV, 7 o'clock 300 yards. He's lining up on our engine. Morrison didn't hesitate. Gunner traverse rear. Forget the Panther. But sir, do it. Castellano spun the turret. The electric motor whined in protest. 180 degrees of traverse. 10 seconds that felt like 10 hours. Through his mirror, Granger watched the Panzer IV's gun barrel tracking them. The German crew thought they had an easy kill. Immobile Sherman rear shot probably couldn't even see them. They were wrong. On target, Castellano screamed. Fire! The 75mm roared. At 300 yards, the armor-piercing shell covered the distance in less than a second. It hit the Panzer IV's turret face, a weak point thinner armor, to reduce weight, and penetrated. The German tank's ammunition exploded with such violence that the turret lifted completely off the hull and landed 15 feet away. Kill! Morrison pounded the turret wall. 1 more down traverse forward we've got. The second impact was worse than the first. The Panther's 88mm round hit Kentucky Girl's frontal glacis at a steep angle, penetrated and exited through the hull floor. Henderson died instantly, vaporized by the shell's passage. The driver's compartment filled with smoke and flame. Henderson. Morrison's voice cracked. No response. Just the roar of fire and the screaming of metal. We've lost the driver. Castellano was coughing, smoke filling the turret. Sir, we have to bail. No. Granger grabbed him. If we bail, we're dead. The Panthers will machine gun us before we get 10 feet. We're already dead. The hull's on fire. The turret's not. We can still fight. Morrison made the decision. Granger's right. We stay. Gonna acquire that Panther, the one that killed Henderson. I want that son of a bitch dead. But Castellano was staring at the smoke pouring up from the hull. Sir, the fire's gonna cook off the ammunition in the floor racks. Then we kill that Panther before it does. Acquire the fucking target. Granger didn't wait for orders. He grabbed another shell, loaded it, secured the breech. His hands were blistered from touching hot metal. His lungs burned. The temperature in the turret had climbed past 130 degrees, but the gun was loaded and the breech was closed and they could still fight. Target acquired. Castellano had tears streaming down his face from the smoke. Range 500. Fire. The shell hit the Panther's gun mantlet, another weak point, and penetrated into the crew compartment. The German tank stopped moving. Smoke poured from its hatches, but it didn't explode. The crew was probably dead or dying, but the tank itself remained intact. 0641 hours. Kentucky Girl sat there burning. Granger loaded shells. Castellano fired. Morrison called targets. They destroyed 1 more Panzer IV at 400 yards, then another at 300. The smoke from their own hull was so thick that Granger worked blind hands finding shells by touch lungs, screaming for air that wasn't there. Able 6, Kentucky Girl. Morrison's voice on the radio was barely a whisper. We're out. 6 confirmed kills, but we're done. Hull fire too severe. We're bailing out. Copy, Kentucky Girl. Get your crew clear. The Panthers are breaking contact. I repeat, hostiles are withdrawing. You did it. You held them. Morrison grabbed Granger's shoulder. Out! Now! Through the turret hatch. Go! Granger went, hands on the hatch rim, pulling himself up the metal so hot it seared his palms. Castellano behind him. Morrison last. They dropped off Kentucky Girl's turret and ran stumbling, falling, crawling away from the tank that had been their home for 3 months. 50 yards away, Granger collapsed in the mud and watched Kentucky Girl burn. Black smoke rising like a funeral pyre. The ammunition cooked off at 0644 hours, the remaining shells detonating in a chain reaction that blew the turret off the hull. Morrison sat beside him, face black with soot, hands shaking. Henderson's still in there. I know, sir. We left him. He was already gone, sir. The round that killed him there was nothing left. Castellano was vomiting in the grass, heaving up bile in fear. Granger put a hand on his back, said nothing. What was there to say? 7-10 hours. The battlefield was silent except for burning tanks. Granger counted the hulls. 6 German tanks destroyed 3 Panzer IVs, 2 Panthers, 1 command variant he couldn't identify from this distance. American losses, 3 Shermans, destroyed 2 damaged. Kentucky Girl among the dead. But they'd held. 7 Shermans against 12 German tanks, and the Germans withdrew. By the cold mathematics of tank warfare, that was a victory. By any other measure, it was just survival. A jeep arrived carrying Major William Trent, battalion commander. He climbed out, surveyed the carnage, and walked over to where Morrison's crew sat in the mud. "Lieutenant, report." Morrison stood saluted despite everything. "Sir, Kentucky Girl engaged multiple hostiles, 6 confirmed kills. We held the western approach until enemy withdrew. Lost our driver. Tank destroyed." Trent looked at the burning hulk of Kentucky Girl. "I heard reports you engaged targets from the rear, multiple times. How?" Morrison glanced at Granger. "The mirror, sir. Sergeant Granger's modification. It gave us rear visibility. Allowed us to spot flanking attempts before they could get kill shots. Without him, we'd have been dead in the first 5 minutes." Trent turned to Granger. "You're the one who's been installing car mirrors and tank turrets." "Yes, sir." "Against regulations." "Yes, sir." "Saved your crew today." "Yes, sir." Trent was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Sergeant, as of this moment, I'm issuing a battalion-wide order. Every Sherman tank under my command will be equipped with auxiliary rear-view mirrors. I'm also recommending to Division that your modification be standardized across the armored force. You've got something here, something that changes how we fight." Granger looked at Kentucky Girl's burning corpse, at the 6 German tanks they'd destroyed, at Castellano still trembling, at Morrison face blank with shock. "Permission to speak freely, sir." "Granted. The mirror didn't save us, sir. It just let us see what was trying to kill us. We still got hit. Henderson still died. We still lost the tank. All the mirror did was change the odds from impossible to barely possible. That's not victory. That's just math." Trent nodded slowly. "You're right, Sergeant. It is just math. But in this war, math is the difference between extinction and survival. And today your math killed 6 German tanks while saving 3 American crews. I'll take that equation any day." He climbed back in his jeep and drove away, leaving the 3 survivors sitting in the mud, watching their tank burn. 07:48 hours. Medics arrived. Checked Granger's ribs, bruised not broken. Bandaged Castellano's hands, 2nd-degree burns from touching hot metal. Gave Morrison something for shock. None of them spoke. What was there to say? By 800 hours, a recovery vehicle arrived to salvage what was left of Kentucky Girl. The fire had burned itself out. The hull was a blackened skeleton. The turret lay upside down 20 feet away, torn free by the ammunition explosion. And somewhere in the driver's compartment, what remained of Roy Henderson. "They'll bury him with the tank," Morrison said quietly. "Mark it as a battlefield grave. His family'll get a letter saying he died quickly, heroically. They won't mention that we left him burning while we ran." "He was already dead, sir," Granger said again. "The shell that hit us, I know, doesn't change the fact we left him." They stood there in silence, 3 men who'd lived when they should have died, staring at the tomb of the 4th who didn't make it. "You know what kills me," Castellano said finally. "We did everything right. The mirror worked. We saw them coming. We got kills. We held the line. And Henderson still died. So what's the fucking point?" "The point," Morrison said, "is that without the mirror, we'd all be dead. All 4 of us. The mirror didn't make us invincible. It just made us less blind. And sometimes that's enough." 09:15 hours. A truck arrived to transport them back to battalion headquarters. As they climbed in, Granger looked back one more time at Kentucky Girl, at the small piece of French car mirror that had somehow survived the fire still mounted in the turret wreckage, still reflecting the morning sky. He thought about the French family who'd owned that Citroën, who'd adjusted that mirror 10,000 times to check their appearance watch for traffic live ordinary lives. They were probably dead now, killed by Germans or Allied bombs or just the random violence of war. But their mirror had lived, and in living it had saved 3 American tankers, maybe more if the modification spread. "Hey, Granger," Castellano said as the truck pulled away. "You think Henderson knew about the mirror, that it worked?" "I don't know. I hope he knew. I hope in those last seconds before the shell hit, he knew we could see what was coming, that we had a chance." Granger closed his eyes, felt the truck bounce over rutted road, smelled smoke and diesel and his own fear sweat that wouldn't wash off. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I hope he knew too." But deep down, Granger understood the truth that would haunt him for decades. The mirror hadn't saved Henderson. It had only saved the men who could see the death coming and couldn't prevent it. And sometimes seeing wasn't enough. Sometimes you watched your friends die and survived anyway. And you carried that weight for the rest of your life. The truck rolled on through the French countryside past burned villages and dead livestock and all the ordinary horrors of liberation. Behind them, Kentucky Girl smoldered. Ahead, new tanks waited, new crews, new battles. The war didn't pause for grief. It never did. But somewhere in the wreckage, a 6-inch piece of car mirror caught the light and reflected the sky, a small monument to the mathematics of survival and the thin line between the living and the dead. The truck dropped them at battalion headquarters, a commandeered farmhouse outside Lunaville at 10:47 hours. Granger's ribs throbbed with every breath. Castellano hadn't spoken since they left the battlefield. Morrison walked like a man who'd aged 20 years in 2 hours. Inside the operations room smelled like coffee, cigarette smoke and mimeograph ink. Maps covered every wall. Radio operators hunched over equipment voices crackling with coordinates and casualty reports. Major Trent stood at the center pointing at a map of the Lorraine region while captains took notes. "Gentlemen?" Trent looked up as Morrison's crew entered. "Glad you're alive. Get some food cleanup. Debrief in 30 minutes. "Sir," Morrison said about Henderson. "I know. Casualty affairs will handle the paperwork. His parents will receive the letter within 2 weeks. You'll have time to add a personal note if you want." Morrison's face went blank. That peculiar emptiness that came when grief was too big to process, so your brain just shut down instead. "Thank you, sir." They stumbled to the mess tent. Powdered eggs and toast that tasted like cardboard. Granger forced it down anyway. His body needed fuel even if his mind couldn't care. Across the table, Castellano stared at his plate without eating. "Jimmy," Granger said quietly, "you need to eat." "Why?" "Because we're still alive. Henderson's not." "No, he's not. But we are. And starving yourself won't change that." Castellano picked up his fork, put it down, picked it up again, finally took a bite, chewed, mechanically swallowed, without tasting. "You know what I keep thinking," Castellano said. "What if the mirror hadn't worked? What if you never found that? Citroën never had the idea. Would we all be dead? Or would Henderson still be alive because we'd have fought differently, positioned differently?" "Don't." Morrison's voice cut through. "Don't do that to yourself. The mirror worked. We saw them coming. We killed 6 German tanks. That's the reality. Everything else is just ghosts." But Granger understood what Castellano meant. Survivor's guilt wasn't logical. It was the voice in your head asking why you deserved to live when better men died. It was the calculation that never balanced 3 lives, saved 1 life lost, and somehow the equation still felt wrong. 15 hours. Debrief. They sat in hard wooden chairs while Trent and his intelligence officer, Captain Robert Finch, asked questions. How many enemy tanks? What types, ranges of engagement? Number of rounds expended? Granger answered mechanically, reciting numbers that meant death. "And the mirror modification," Finch said, flipping through notes. "You used it to spot multiple flanking attempts." "Yes, sir. 4 separate contacts from rear angles. Without visual confirmation via the mirror, we wouldn't have known they were there until they fired. How long does it take to install one? Depends on the tank variant and available materials. If you've got a suitable mirror, maybe 45 minutes. Most of that's finding the right angle. Finch exchanged glances with Trent. Major, with your permission, I'd like to send Sergeant Granger to the tank depot at Nancy. They've got 63 Shermans staged for frontline deployment. If he can train the maintenance crews to install these mirrors before the tanks roll out. Do it, Trent said immediately. Granger, you're reassigned effective immediately. Your new mission is to equip every Sherman in this division with rear-view mirrors and train the crews how to use them. Captain Finch will provide transport and authorization. Granger blinked. Sir, I'm a loader. I belong with the tank crew. You were a loader. Now you're the man who's going to save tank crews. That's an order, Sergeant. There was no arguing with orders. Granger nodded. Yes, sir. Morrison Castellano, you're getting a new tank. Kentucky Girl Jr., if you want to keep the name. She's a 76mm Sherman fresh from depot. Crew her up, get a new driver and loader. You roll out in 72 hours. Morrison saluted. They filed out of the operations room into afternoon sunlight that felt too bright, too cheerful for men who'd watched their friend burn. Granger, Morrison said. What you did today, what you've been doing since that first mirror, you know it matters, right? Does it? Henderson's still dead. Yeah, but Eddie Kowalski's alive. Lucas Brenner's alive. Every crew that's using those mirrors has a better chance. That's not nothing. And Granger wanted to believe him. Wanted to feel like the mirrors meant something beyond postponing inevitable death. But all he could see was Kentucky Girl burning Henderson's body somewhere in that metal coffin, and the cold mathematics that said 4 Shermans lost versus 6 Panzers destroyed was a victory. Sir, Granger said, when you get Kentucky Girl Jr., make sure they install a mirror. Train the new loader how to use it. And tell him it's from Henderson, that he paid for it. Morrison's eyes went wet. He nodded, saluted, and walked away before the tears could fall. 14:30 hours. Nancy Tank Depot. The depot was organized chaos. 63 Sherman tanks in various stages of readiness. Mechanics swarming over engines, testing transmissions, mounting machine guns. The smell was grease and fresh paint and the particular stink of Cosmoline being cleaned off new equipment. Captain Finch introduced Granger to the depot commander, a grizzled master sergeant named Frank Kowalski, no relation to Eddie, who ran the facility like a factory floor. You're the mirror guy, Kowalski said, lighting a cigar that smelled like burned rope. Major says you need mirrors for 63 tanks. That's 63 mirrors I don't have. There's destroyed vehicles all over this sector, Granger said. French civilian cars, German trucks, anything with a rear-view mirror. We salvage them. Salvage from civilian wrecks. Kowalski took a long drag. Army Supply is gonna love that. Army Supply isn't getting shot by panzers they can't see. Kowalski almost smiled. Fair point. All right, I'll send crews to collect mirrors. You figure out the installation. Deal. Deal. By 1600 hours, Granger had a work detail of 8 mechanics and a pile of salvaged mirrors. French cars, German staff vehicles, even one from a British lorry. 68 mirrors total. More than enough. He started with a factory-fresh M4A1, the most common variant in the depot. Climbed into the turret, measured angles, tested sight lines. The loader's position was slightly different than Kentucky Girl's. The ready rack was positioned 6 inches forward, so he adjusted the mirror placement accordingly. You mount it here, he told the watching mechanics, pointing to a turret stanchion. 43 to 45 degree angle depending on the loader's height. Wireframe secured with hose clamps or welding if you've got time. The key is catching light from the loader's hatch and the rear vision block bouncing it into the loader's peripheral vision while he's working. And this actually works in combat, one mechanic asked skeptically. Granger looked at him. I used it to kill 6 German tanks this morning. My driver still died, but 3 of us lived. You tell me if it works. The mechanic shut up and started installing. By 1900 hours, they'd completed 8 tanks. By midnight 23. Granger worked through exhaustion, running on coffee and adrenaline, and something darker, the need to make Henderson's death count for something. Every mirror installed was another crew with a chance, another loader who might see the Panzer coming and call out in time. September 13th, 1944. 0340 hours. Granger collapsed on a cot in the depot office and dreamed about fire, about loading shells while smoke filled his lungs, about watching Henderson's driver hatch waiting for him to climb out, knowing he never would. He woke at 0600 drenched in sweat hands, already moving through the loading sequence before his brain caught up to reality. The depot was already alive with activity. Mechanics working by floodlight welding sparks, showering like fireworks. Kowalski appeared with coffee that tasted like diesel fuel. "You look like hell, Sergeant." "Feel worse." Granger took the coffee anyway. "How many done?" 37. "We'll have all 63 finished by 1400 hours. Then comes the hard part, training the crews." "What's hard about it?" "Look in the mirror. Call out contacts." "The hard part," Kowalski said, "is getting tankers to trust a piece of French car glass to save their lives. That's a sales job, son. And you're the salesman." 0900 hours. Crews started arriving. 63 tank crews, 315 men, gathered in the depot's assembly area. Granger stood on the back of a truck bed, looking at faces that ranged from 18 to 30 veterans, mixed with replacements, fresh from stateside training. "Gentlemen," he began, voice carrying across the crowd, "my name is Sergeant Walter Granger. Yesterday morning, my tank took a hit from a Panther at 500 yards. My driver was killed instantly. The hull caught fire. We should have all died." The crowd was silent, listening. "We didn't die because 3 weeks ago I installed a rear-view mirror in our turret. A mirror from a destroyed French car, 6 inches wide, mounted so the loader could see rear approaches while working. Yesterday, that mirror spotted 4 separate flanking attempts. We killed 6 German tanks because we saw them before they got optimal firing positions. The mirror didn't make us invincible, but it made us less blind." He paused. Let it sink in. "Every tank in this depot now has one of these mirrors installed. Your job is to learn how to use them, because I promise you, the Germans know about our blind spots. They're trained to exploit them. And when they come from behind, when they line up that perfect rear shot, the question isn't whether you'll die. It's whether you'll see death coming or die surprised. The mirror gives you 3 seconds. 3 seconds to call contact, traverse the turret, get your frontal armor toward them. 3 seconds doesn't sound like much, but it's the difference between loading shells and burning alive." A hand went up. "Young kid, couldn't be more than 19. "Sergeant, did the mirror save your crew?" Granger thought about Henderson, about the shell that killed him, about the fire. "No," he said honestly. "It didn't save us. We still got hit. My driver still died, but it let us see what was coming. And because we saw, we killed the tanks that were trying to kill us. 3 of us walked away. Without the mirror, none of us would have." Another hand. "How do we know it'll work for us?" "You don't. You don't know if your armor will stop a shell. You don't know if your engine will start when you need it. You don't know if the guy next to you will break under fire. All you know is what improves your odds. This mirror improves your odds. Not much, not a miracle, just math. And in this war, math is all we've got." The training took 6 hours. Granger rotated through crews, showing each loader how to position themselves, how to interpret the reversed compressed image, how to estimate ranges from the reflection. Some got it immediately, others struggled. He was patient with all of them, remembering his own confusion the first time he'd looked through salvaged French glass. "The image is backwards," he explained to a loader named Private Martinez. "Left in the mirror is right behind you. Takes about 5 minutes to adjust. Don't think about it. Just look, process, call out. What if I make a mistake? Call contact when there's nothing there. Then your gunner traverses, sees nothing, and you look foolish. What if you don't call contact when there's a Panther lining up a shot?" Martinez went pale. "Point taken, Sergeant." By 15:30 hours, all 63 crews had completed basic training. They'd walk away knowing how to use the mirrors. Whether they'd trust them in combat, that was a different question. September 14th, 1944. 08:15 hours. The first convoy of mirror-equipped Shermans rolled out of Nancy Depot toward the front. Granger watched them go, standing beside Kowalski counting hulls. 20 tanks in this convoy. 20 crews with a chance. "Think it'll spread?" Kowalski asked. "If it works, it'll spread. If crews survive because of the mirrors, word will get around. Tankers talk. And if they don't survive, then we tried something and it didn't work. War is full of ideas that didn't work." But Kowalski was looking at him with something like respect. "You really believe that this might not work?" Granger thought about the mathematics. About 6 Panzers destroyed versus 4 Shermans lost. About Henderson dying while 3 men lived. "I believe the mirror improves odds. I believe seeing is better than blind. Beyond that," he shrugged. "We're still in Shermans fighting Panthers. The math isn't ever going to be in our favor, but maybe we can make it less unfavorable. That's all I'm trying to do. That's all any of us are trying to do, son. Make the odds a little less shitty." 16:30 hours, battalion headquarters. Major Trent called Granger into his office. On the desk lay a stack of after-action reports all marked with red pencil. "Sit down, Sergeant." Granger sat. "I've been reading engagement reports from units equipped with your mirrors. As of this morning, we've got 47 Shermans in active service using the modification. In the past 48 hours, those tanks have been involved in 11 separate engagements. Combined enemy armor destroyed 19 tanks. American losses, 3 tanks destroyed, 7 damaged. Compare that to our standard loss ratios." He shuffled papers. "We usually lose 1 Sherman for every 0.6 German tanks destroyed. Your mirror-equipped tanks are destroying 3.1 enemy tanks for every loss." Granger did the math in his head. "That was 5 times more effective than standard Sherman performance." "Sir, that can't be just the mirrors. That's tactics training luck, and yes, the mirrors. But the common factor in every engagement is enhanced rear visibility. Crews are spotting flanking attempts earlier, reorienting faster, getting first shots more frequently. The data is preliminary, but it's compelling." Trent pulled out another document. "This is a memo I'm sending to 3rd Army headquarters. I'm recommending your mirror modification be standardized across all armored divisions. I'm also recommending you for promotion to technical sergeant and reassignment to Army Ordnance as a field consultant." "Sir, I don't care what you want, Sergeant. I care about winning. And right now you and your French car mirror are helping us win. That's bigger than your personal preferences." Granger stared at the memo, saw his name typed in official Army language, felt the weight of what it meant, his improvisation, his desperate field modification, becoming doctrine, becoming the thing that might save thousands of tankers who'd never know his name. "Henderson should have been here," Granger said quietly. "He died so we could figure out the mirror worked. Then honor his death by making sure other drivers don't die the same way. That's how you pay that debt." Trent handed him the memo. At the bottom, in neat handwriting, "In recognition of Sergeant Walter Granger's initiative in developing enhanced rear observation techniques, which have significantly improved crew survival rates and combat effectiveness in the M4 Sherman medium tank. Recommended for Army commendation and technical promotion." Granger folded the paper, put it in his pocket. It felt heavier than it should. "Permission to return to my unit, sir." "Denied. You're more valuable here spreading this modification. Morrison's crew is doing fine with Kentucky Girl Jr. Your new mission is saving tankers. Accept it." Outside, the sun was setting over the French countryside. Somewhere out there, 47 Shermans equipped with salvaged mirrors were rolling toward contact with German armor. 47 crews who had a slightly better chance of seeing death before it arrived. Granger walked to the motor pool, found an empty Sherman tank and climbed inside. Sat in the loader's position. Looked at the space where a mirror would be mounted. Remembered Henderson's last moments, the impact, the fire, the smoke. Remembered Tommy and Steve and Danny and all the others who'd died because they couldn't see what killed them. "I'm sorry," he whispered to the empty tank. "I'm sorry it wasn't enough." But the tank didn't answer. Tanks never did. They were just machines, metal and mechanics, doing what humans commanded. The mirror didn't change that. It just changed what the humans could see. And seeing, really seeing, was both a gift and a curse. Because now Granger would spend the rest of his life watching tank crews roll toward battle, knowing some would live because of his mirrors and some would die despite them, and he'd never know which was which until the casualty reports came back. He climbed out of the Sherman as darkness fell, walking back toward the depot office where more work waited. More mirrors to install, more crews to train, more mathematics of survival to calculate. Behind him in the gathering dark, the empty Sherman sat silent, waiting for its crew, waiting for its mirror, waiting for the moment when geometry and luck and German steel would determine whether anyone inside lived to see tomorrow. The war didn't pause for grief. It never did. But in the space between battles and the quiet moments when men worked by floodlight to give other men a chance, there was something that felt almost like hope, not redemption, not victory. Just the stubborn, grinding determination to make the odds a little less shitty for the next crew rolling out. And sometimes in war, that was the only honor available. September 18th, 1944. 3rd Army Headquarters, Chateau de Mercy, outside Metz. Granger stood in a room full of colonels and generals feeling like an imposter. His sergeant's stripes looked out of place among the oak leaves and stars. But Major General John Wood, commander of the 4th Armored Division, had personally requested his presence, so here he was sweating through his dress uniform while staff officers argued over maps. The problem, Wood was saying, pointing at the Lorraine region, is that we're still losing tanks at an unacceptable rate. Yes, Sergeant Granger's mirror modification has improved our kill ratios, but improved isn't enough. We need overwhelming. A colonel from Ordnance cleared his throat. Sir, with respect, the Sherman wasn't designed to go toe-to-toe with Panthers and Tigers. We're doing everything we can with what we have. Then get us better tanks. Wood's voice could have cut steel. Or accept that we're going to keep feeding young men into a meat grinder because someone in Washington decided the M4 was good enough. Silence. The kind that happened when a general said what everyone thought, but nobody dared speak. Wood turned to Granger. "Sergeant, you've been installing mirrors for 6 days now. How many tanks equipped?" 147, sir, across 3 divisions. "And the feedback from crews?" Granger pulled out a small notebook he'd been keeping. "Mixed, sir. Veteran crews adapt quickly. They understand the value of enhanced visibility. Replacement crews are more skeptical. They think it's superstition, until they see it work. Tell them what happened to Able Company 2nd Battalion." Granger flipped pages. September 16th. Able Company engaged German armor near Chateau Salins. 8 Shermans, all mirror-equipped, versus 12 mixed German tanks. Engagement lasted 19 minutes. German losses, 9 tanks destroyed. American losses, 2 damaged, 0 destroyed. Company commander credited the mirrors with spotting 3 separate flanking attempts that would have resulted in catastrophic losses. Wood slammed his hand on the table. 9-0. That's not luck. That's a tactical advantage. Why isn't every tank in Europe equipped? Supply chain, sir, the ordnance colonel said. We can't manufacture specialized mirrors fast enough. Then keep salvaging them from wrecks. Granger's been doing it with French car parts. You're telling me the entire United States Army can't match what one sergeant accomplished with scrap metal? Sir, there's also the question of standardization. Each tank variant requires slightly different mirror placement. Then train mechanics on variant-specific installation. Figure it out. The meeting dissolved into logistics and procurement arguments. Granger stood there feeling useless until Wood dismissed everyone except him. Walk with me, Sergeant. They left the chateau, walking through grounds that had once been ornamental gardens. Now they were motor pools and command tents. You know what you've done, Wood asked. Made things slightly less terrible, sir. You've proven that innovation doesn't require a laboratory or a procurement committee. Sometimes it just requires a smart soldier who's tired of watching friends die. That's rarer than you think. Sir, I just found a mirror and you had the presence of mind to see a solution where everyone else saw an immutable problem. The Sherman's blind spot has been documented since 1942. Thousands of engineers and tacticians knew about it. You're the one who fixed it with 6 inches of French glass. They stopped beside a Sherman tank being prepped for deployment. The mirror was already installed. Granger could see it through the open loader's hatch. I'm assigning you to 4th Armored Division permanently, Wood said. You'll train every crew, supervise every installation, and document everything. When this war ends, your work will become doctrine. That's not a request. Sir, I'm a loader. I belong in a tank. You were a loader. Now you're the reason loaders survive. Accept it, Sergeant. Some men fight the war. Some men change it. You don't get to choose which. October 3rd, 1944. 4th Armored Division training area near Nancy. 3 weeks had passed. Granger had trained 462 tank crews, installed mirrors in 238 Shermans, slept maybe 4 hours a night, lost 12 pounds. Stopped dreaming about Henderson because he was too exhausted to dream at all. He was demonstrating mirror usage to a fresh crew when a jeep roared up spraying mud. Granger, you need to see this. Captain Finch, barely coherent, waving a radio transcript. What happened? Your mirrors, they just won a battle we shouldn't have won. They drove to division headquarters where a major engagement was being analyzed in real time. The operations officer, Lieutenant Colonel Hayes, was reading radio reports aloud to assembled staff. Baker Company 37th Tank Battalion encountered German armor at Moorhange. Initial contact 6 Shermans versus estimated 8 Panthers and 15 Panzer IVs. Textbook scenario for American annihilation. Granger's stomach dropped. Those odds were suicide. Hayes continued. But Baker Company was fully equipped with Granger mirrors. As German forces attempted standard encirclement tactics, American crews spotted flanking movements from rear and side positions. Instead of being surrounded, Baker Company used the advance warning to establish a defensive arc presenting frontal armor to all threats while systematically engaging German tanks attempting to maneuver for side shots. What were the casualties? Someone asked. German losses 6 Panthers, 11 Panzer IVs, 17 tanks destroyed. Hayes looked up from the report. American losses 3 Shermans damaged, 0 destroyed, 0 casualties. The room erupted. Officers shouting questions, demanding clarification. This wasn't improvement. This was a fundamental reversal of the standard Sherman versus Panther exchange rate. How is that possible? A major demanded. Panthers outgun us, out-armor us. But they can't outflank us if we see them coming, Hayes said. That's what Sergeant Granger's modification provides. The Germans are trained to exploit our blind spots. When those blind spots disappear, their entire tactical doctrine breaks down. Finch grabbed Granger's shoulder. You hearing this? You just obsoleted German tank tactics. But Granger was thinking about the numbers differently. 17 German tanks destroyed meant 17 crews dead or wounded, maybe 70 German tankers burned alive or bled out in steel coffins. The mirror didn't change the math of death, it just transferred the equation to the other side. Sergeant Granger, Hayes was looking at him. General Patton wants to meet you. Sir. 3rd Army Commander. He's heard about your mirrors. Wants a personal briefing. Tomorrow, 0900 hours. Don't be late. October 4th, 1944. 08:55 hours. 3rd Army Headquarters. General George S. Patton was exactly what Granger expected. Tall, immaculate uniform, pearl-handled revolvers, and a presence that made you stand straighter, even if you were already at attention. Sergeant Granger, the mirror man. Yes, sir. Patton walked around him, examining like a specimen. I've read the reports. Your modification has improved Sherman effectiveness by approximately 300% in rear aspect engagements. That's the difference between defeat and victory. You know what that makes you. Lucky, sir, bus. Valuable. I'm authorizing immediate expansion of your program. Every Sherman in 3rd Army will be equipped with these mirrors within 30 days. You'll train battalion-level mechanics to handle installations. I want this standardized, documented, and permanent. Sir, I'm just one sergeant. You're the sergeant who's saving my tankers. That makes you worth more than a battalion of replacements. Patton leaned closer. War is won by men who refuse to accept defeat as inevitable. You saw a problem and fixed it. Most soldiers just die. You chose differently. I respect that. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me. Thank me by making sure every tank crew in my army has the same advantage you gave your crew. Can you do that? Granger thought about Henderson, about Tommy and Steve and Danny, about all the names on casualty lists that might have been prevented. Yes, sir. I can do that. Good. Dismissed. Granger saluted, turned to leave. Sergeant, Patton's voice stopped him. Did your mirror save your crew? The question hung in the air. Honest answer or the answer expected. It saved 3 of us, sir. Lost one anyway. What was his name? Henderson, sir. Driver. Took an 88 through the hull. Then make sure Henderson didn't die for nothing. Make sure his death bought something. Working on it, sir. October 15th, 1944. Field Maintenance Depot, Chateau Salins. 2 weeks of brutal work. Granger moved from battalion to battalion, training mechanics, supervising installations, troubleshooting problems. A mirror shattered during installation. He improvised with polished steel plate. A crew complained about glare. He showed them how to angle differently. A tank commander called the whole thing superstitious nonsense. Granger let him talk to survivors of Moorhange. The modifications spread like wildfire. Not through official channels, those were still tangled in procurement bureaucracy, but through tankers talking. A crew would survive an engagement because they spotted a flanking Panther. They'd tell other crews. Those crews would demand mirrors. Word of mouth moved faster than Army paperwork. By mid-October, an estimated 470 Shermans across 3 armies were mirror-equipped, most through official channels, some through crews scavenging their own mirrors and installing them without authorization. Granger heard stories of tankers pulling mirrors off destroyed French cars at night, mounting them by flashlight, not waiting for ordnance to catch up. You've started a movement, Captain Finch told him over terrible coffee. Crews are taking initiative. That never happens in the Army. They're scared, Granger said. Fear makes you creative. Or dead. You made them creative instead. But the success came with weight. Every engagement report that mentioned mirrors, every after-action review. Crediting enhanced visibility with survival added to Granger's burden. Because for every crew saved, there were crews equipped with mirrors who still died. Panthers that punched through frontal armor. Tigers that shrugged off 75mm shells and fired back. Mines and artillery and friendly fire, and all the random violence that killed regardless of whether you could see it coming. October 28, 1944. Forward Aid Station outside Metz. Granger was supervising installations when medics brought in a wounded tanker. Loader from Arizona Rose, caught by shrapnel when a Panther's round penetrated their turret. The kid was maybe 20, bleeding from a dozen places, screaming for his mother. Did you have a mirror? Granger asked the tank commander while medics worked. The TC, a captain named Douglas, nodded grimly. Yeah, we saw the Panther coming. Got our frontal armor toward him. Didn't matter. He was too close, too good. Put 3 rounds into us before we could traverse. Mirror gave us warning, but not enough time. I'm sorry. Don't be. Without the mirror, we'd all be dead. As it is, we lost the loader and gunner. Driver and I bailed out. Douglas looked at the screaming kid on the stretcher. That's Martinez. Good kid. Did everything right. Called out the contact, loaded 2 shells before we got hit. The mirror worked. We still lost. The medics carried Martinez away, still screaming. Granger watched him go and felt the familiar weight settle the knowledge that his modification was successful and insufficient, helpful and inadequate saving. Some while others died anyway. Captain, I need you to tell me the truth, Granger said. Is the mirror worth it? Does it actually change anything? Douglas lit a cigarette with shaking hands. Before mirrors, we were dying blind. Now we're dying with our eyes open. Is that better? I don't know. But I'd rather see what kills me than never know what hit us. So yeah, it's worth it. November 8th, 1944. Nancy Depot. The official memo arrived via courier. Granger read it twice, trying to believe what it said. Subject standardization of auxiliary rear-view mirror systems for M4 medium tanks. Effective immediately, all M4 Sherman variants will be equipped with loader station rear-view mirrors per specifications developed by TSG Walter Granger, 3rd Armored Division. Installation procedures attached. This modification is now standard equipment for all armored units, European Theater of Operations. Below that, a second memo. TSG Granger is hereby promoted to Master Sergeant and assigned to Ordnance Technical Services as Field Consultant Tank Modifications, effective November 1944. Master Sergeant. Technical Services. His field modification had become official doctrine. "Congratulations," Kowalski said, reading over his shoulder. "You just became the most important NCO in the armored force." "I salvaged a mirror from a dead family's car and turned it into something that's going to save thousands of tankers. Take the win, kid." But Granger couldn't shake the feeling that he'd traded one burden for another. He'd been a loader, anonymous expendable, just another sergeant loading shells. Now he was the mirror man, the innovator, the soldier whose modification would be studied in tactical manuals and training courses for decades. He thought about Henderson, who'd never wanted glory, just wanted to survive and go home to Iowa. Henderson would have laughed at all this, the promotions, the recognition, the bureaucratic machinery turning a desperate field improvisation into official doctrine. "I wish he could see this," Granger said quietly. "Who?" "Henderson, my driver, the guy who died so we could prove the mirrors worked." Kowalski was quiet for a moment. "Then honor him by making sure other drivers don't die the same way. That's the debt you pay." November 15th, 1944. Forward position. Metz pocket. Granger hitched a ride to the front lines against orders, but he needed to see the mirrors in action, needed to understand if they really changed anything. He found Morrison's crew with Kentucky Girl Jr. hull down behind a destroyed building waiting for German counterattack. "Granger." Morrison climbed down from the turret. "What the hell are you doing here?" "Checking on you, making sure the mirror's working." "It's working. Saved our ass twice last week. New loader kid named Patterson spotted a panther at 6 o'clock, gave us enough time to reorient and kill it. We all signed a letter to your promotion board. You're welcome." Castellano appeared face thinner than Granger remembered, eyes harder. "Walt, you look like an officer now, all clean and headquartered." "Still a sergeant. Still getting my hands dirty. Just not in a tank." There was accusation in Castellano's voice, resentment that Granger had escaped the steel coffin while they remained inside. "Jimmy, I didn't ask for reassignment." I know, it's just Henderson's dead. You're safe at depot. And we're still here, still rolling out, still wondering which engagement's gonna be our last. The mirror helps, but it doesn't change the fundamental truth we're in Sherman's fighting tigers. Math doesn't favor us." Morrison put a hand on Castellano's shoulder. "Jimmy, ease up. Granger's doing his job. We're doing ours." "Are we?" "Because from where I'm sitting, his job is surviving while ours is dying slowly." Granger had no answer to that, because Castellano was right. The mirror improved odds but didn't eliminate risk. It saved some crews while others burned, and Granger got to watch from safety while men he'd trained died in tanks he'd modified. "I'm sorry," Granger said. "I wish I could do more." "You did enough." Morrison's voice was firm. "You gave us a chance. Nobody promised more than that." They stood there in the cold November wind, three men who'd survived Verneuil together, now separated by duty and fate. Granger wanted to say something profound, something that would bridge the gap between the living and those still risking death. But words felt inadequate against the weight of what they'd endured. "Take care of yourselves," was all he managed. "Always do," Morrison said. "You too, Master Sergeant." Granger left them there, climbed back in the Jeep, and rode away from the front lines. Behind him, Kentucky Girl Jr. sat waiting, mirror-installed crew, ready, another engagement approaching. The modification would help. But it wouldn't save everyone. Nothing saved everyone. December 2nd, 1944. Ordnance Technical Services. Nancy. The final statistics arrived. Between September 12th and December 1st, 1944, A total of 893 Sherman tanks had been equipped with Granger-style auxiliary rear-view mirrors across the European theater. Those tanks had participated in 147 separate engagements with German armor. Combined enemy losses, 412 tanks destroyed. American losses, 107 Shermans, destroyed, 214 damaged. Standard Sherman loss ratios for the same period in non-mirror-equipped tanks: 1 American loss per 0.6 German kills. Mirror-equipped tank ratios: 1 American loss per 3.9 German kills. Granger stared at the numbers. Henderson's death had purchased a mathematical advantage. 3.9 to 1. That meant approximately 700 American tankers alive who would have died without the modification. 700 men who'd go home after the war, have families, live lives. And 321 tankers still dead despite the mirrors. Men who'd seen death coming and died anyway. He thought about Douglas and Martinez, about Morrison and Castellano still fighting, about thousands of crews rolling toward battles where geometry and luck would determine survival. The mirror hadn't ended the war, hadn't made Shermans invincible, hadn't stopped the dying. It had just changed who lived and who didn't, made the math slightly less murderous. And in a war measured by body counts and kill ratios, maybe that was the only victory available, not preventing death, just redistributing it to the other side. Granger folded the statistics report and filed it away. Tomorrow more tanks would need mirrors. More crews would need training. The war would continue until it didn't, and his job was to make sure as many men as possible survived to see the end. Henderson's debt was paid in increments, 700 lives for one. The mathematics were brutal but undeniable. Outside, winter snow began to fall on the French countryside, covering destroyed tanks and unmarked graves in white silence. The war didn't pause for weather. It never paused at all. But in depots and motor pools across Europe, mechanics were installing small mirrors in tank turrets, giving crews a chance to see what hunted them. And that chance, however slim, however inadequate, was the only honor the dead could claim and the living could offer. 3.9 to 1. The mathematics of survival written in steel and blood and salvaged French glass. Not victory, not redemption, just the stubborn refusal to die blind. And sometimes that was enough. December 16th, 1944. Battle of the Bulge, Ardennes Forest. The radio crackled with panic. German armor, entire panzer divisions had smashed through American lines in the pre-dawn darkness, the largest German offensive since 1940. Hundreds of tanks, thousands of soldiers. And in the chaos, someone at headquarters remembered Granger's mirrors. Master Sergeant Granger, you're needed at the front, immediately. He arrived at a forward command post that was barely controlled chaos. Maps covered in red marks showing German penetrations. Officers shouting coordinates. The smell of burned coffee and fear sweat. Colonel Hayes grabbed him the moment he entered. Granger, we've got 60 Shermans being rushed to plug the line. None of them have mirrors. The depot crews didn't have time. How long do I have? 12 hours. After that, they roll whether they're ready or not. 12 hours to equip 60 tanks. Normally that would take 3 days even with trained crews. But there was nothing normal about the Bulge. I need every mechanic you can spare, every salvaged mirror in depot, and coffee. Lots of coffee. Done. Much. By 1400 hours, Granger had assembled a crew of 23 mechanics and scrounged 47 usable mirrors from depot stocks and destroyed vehicles. They worked in shifts, moving from tank to tank, installing mirrors by flashlight as darkness fell. His hands bled from working with wire and metal in freezing temperatures. Didn't matter. Men were dying 20 miles north, and every minute wasted was another crew rolling out blind. A young private, couldn't have been more than 18, approached while Granger was installing mirror number 32. Sergeant, I'm Patterson, loader for Kentucky Girl Jr. Granger looked up, recognized the name. Morrison's crew. You're the one who spotted that panther last month. Yes, Sergeant. The mirror saved us. I wanted to say thank you before we roll out tomorrow. Don't thank me. Just use what I taught you. Look in that mirror every chance you get. Trust what you see. I will, Sergeant, I promise. Patterson walked away. Granger watched him go, seeing Henderson and the kids walk, hearing Tommy's voice and his gratitude. How many Pattersons were there? How many kids rolling toward German guns, counting on 6 inches of salvaged glass to keep them alive? By 0200 hours on December 17th, 53 tanks had mirrors installed. 7 remained. Granger's vision blurred from exhaustion. His hands moved on autopilot, measuring angles, bending wires, securing frames. The mechanics were dead on their feet, but nobody stopped. Couldn't stop. Lives depended on finishing. Granger. Kowalski appeared with something that might have been coffee. You've been working for 18 straight hours. You need to rest. 7 more tanks. You're going to collapse. Then I'll collapse after tank 60, not before. At 0520 hours, the last mirror went in. Granger signed off on the paperwork, his signature barely legible from trembling hands. 60 tanks. 60 crews, all equipped. Good work, Master Sergeant, Hayes said. Now get some sleep. That's an order. Granger stumbled to a cot and passed out, still wearing his boots. Dreamed about mirrors shattering about Henderson, burning about Patterson's young face, disappearing in smoke. He woke 4 hours later to the sound of tanks rolling out. Through the tent flap, he watched 60 Shermans lumber north toward the sound of guns. Kentucky Girl Jr. was among them, Morrison visible in the commander's cupola, Patterson somewhere inside at the loader's station. Come back, Granger whispered. Please come back. December 23rd, 1944. Bastogne perimeter. The casualty reports arrived in waves. The Bulge was a meat grinder. German Tigers and Panthers were tearing through American lines. But something strange was showing up in the after-action reports. Mirror-equipped Shermans were surviving at rates that defied normal statistics. Hayes called Granger into operations. Spread across the map table were engagement summaries from 6 different battles around Bastogne. Look at this. December 18th, outside Noville. 8 Shermans with mirrors engaged 12 Panthers in limited visibility. They spotted German flanking maneuvers despite fog and smoke. Result: 4 Panthers destroyed, 2 Shermans damaged but operational. He pointed to another report. December 20th, Foy. Mirror-equipped tanks detected German armor approaching through tree cover from multiple angles. Repositioned before contact, established crossfire. 5 Panzer IVs destroyed, 0 American losses. The Germans are using their standard tactics, Hayes continued. Exploitation of blind spots, flanking maneuvers, surprise from rear angles. But when those tactics fail because crews can see them coming, the Panthers and Tigers lose their primary advantage. They're still better armored, better armed. But if they can't get optimal firing positions, the advantage diminishes. Granger studied the reports. The numbers were undeniable. Mirror-equipped tanks in the Bulge were destroying German armor at a 4.2 to 1 ratio. Without mirrors, the ratio was reversed. German tanks were winning 2.1 to 1. How many crews are we losing? He asked quietly. Hayes flipped through casualty lists. In mirror-equipped units, approximately 18% casualties over 6 days of heavy combat. In non-equipped units, 43%. 18%. That meant 1 in 5 tankers was dead or wounded. Terrible odds, but half the rate of crews without mirrors. Patterson's crew, Granger asked. Hayes checked the roster. Kentucky Girl Jr., still operational. Engaged German armor 4 separate times. 3 confirmed kills. No casualties. Granger felt something unlock in his chest. Relief so profound it hurt. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me. Thank that kid for looking in his mirror. January 7th, 1945. Nancy Depot. The Bulge was over. The Germans had been pushed back, their offensive broken, Allied lines held. The cost: 19,000 American dead, 47,000 wounded. Tank casualties: 342 Shermans destroyed. Granger received a memo from 3rd Army headquarters. Of those 342 destroyed Shermans, only 71 had been equipped with mirrors. The rest 271 tanks had died without enhanced rear visibility. He did the math. If all tanks had been mirror-equipped at the bulge's start, estimated American armor losses would have dropped by approximately 60%. That translated to roughly 163 tanks saved. 815 tankers who might have lived. But might have didn't resurrect the dead. It just haunted the living. Morrison's crew returned to depot on January 10th. Kentucky Girl Jr. was scarred but functional welded patches over 3 separate penetrations, new tracks, rebuilt transmission. Patterson climbed out of the loader's hatch looking 20 years older than when he'd climbed in. "Sergeant Granger," Patterson saluted with hands that shook. "Reporting back, sir." "At ease, Private. How was it?" "Hell, sir. Pure hell. But the mirror," his voice cracked. "The mirror saved us. I can't count how many times. 6, maybe 7 separate contacts. I saw them coming, called it out, we repositioned. Without that mirror, we'd be dead. All of us." Morrison climbed down, moving like his bones ached. "Walt, your modification is the only reason my crew is standing here. Patterson's right. We'd have died 6 times over without rear visibility." Castellano appeared last. He looked at Granger for a long moment, and something in his eyes had changed. The resentment from November was gone, replaced by exhausted gratitude. "I owe you an apology," Castellano said. "Back in November, I said you were safe while we were dying. I was wrong. You were saving us. Every mirror you installed, every crew you trained, you were fighting the war your way. And your way kept us alive. I just gave you a tool, Jimmy. You're the ones who used it." "Yeah, but without the tool, we'd be ghosts." Castellano stuck out his hand. "Thank you, for real." Granger shook it. Felt the calluses, the strength in fingers that had loaded hundreds of shells under fire. These were survivors' hands. And maybe, just maybe, his mirrors had helped them survive. March 15th, 1945, Remagen Bridge, Germany. The war was ending. Everyone could feel it. The Germans were retreating, their lines collapsing. American armor was racing across Germany, pushing toward Berlin, and wherever they went, mirror-equipped Shermans led the way. Granger was attached to a forward armored column crossing the Rhine when they encountered the last major German tank formation of the war. 30 Panthers and Tiger IIs making a desperate stand outside Koblenz. The American force, 48 Shermans, all mirror-equipped, engaged at dawn. Granger watched from a command half-track as the battle unfolded. The Germans tried their standard tactics, flanking maneuvers, use of terrain for concealment attacks from multiple angles designed to exploit Sherman blind spots. But the American crews saw every approach, called out every movement, repositioned faster than the Germans anticipated. The battle lasted 47 minutes. When it ended, 23 German tanks were burning. American losses, 6 Shermans damaged, 2 destroyed. The kill ratio, 11.5 to 1. "Unbelievable," the operations officer whispered. "We just beat Panthers and Tigers. Decisively." But Granger was watching smoke rise from 2 destroyed Shermans, 10 tankers dead. 10 men who'd had mirrors, had training, had every advantage he could provide, and they'd died anyway. The math was better, but better still meant death. April 19th, 1945, outside Berlin, word came that President Roosevelt had died. The news hit like a physical blow. The man who'd led them through the Depression and the war, gone. Granger sat in the depot office, listening to radio reports, feeling the weight of history shift. But the war continued. Hitler was in his bunker. The Russians were in Berlin. The end was days away. On April 30th, Hitler killed himself. On May 7th, Germany surrendered. On May 8th, 1945, victory in Europe was declared. The war was over. Granger stood in the depot yard at 2300 hours on VE Day, listening to distant celebrations. Tanks that had been instruments of death were now monuments to survival. He walked among them, touching hulls, running his fingers over mirror installations. Each one represented crews who'd lived or died, based on whether they could see death approaching. Master Sergeant Granger. A young officer, Second Lieutenant Williams from Army Historical Division, approached with a clipboard and camera. "Sir, I'm documenting technical innovations from the war. Your mirror modification is on the list. Can I ask you some questions? Sure. Williams pulled out a notebook. According to records, you personally supervised the installation of mirrors in over 800 Sherman tanks. Your modification spread to an estimated 2,000 additional tanks through field adoption. Combined mirror-equipped tanks showed a 4.1 to 1 kill ratio against German armor, compared to 0.6 to 1 for non-equipped tanks. That's a 700% improvement in combat effectiveness. Did you anticipate that impact when you installed the first mirror? Granger thought about August 28, 1944, about finding a rearview mirror in a destroyed Citroën, about thinking it might save his crew. No, sir. I just wanted to see what was behind us. Didn't think beyond that. But you changed tank warfare doctrine. Your modification will be standard equipment on all future American tanks. You've probably saved thousands of lives. And thousands still died, sir. The mirrors helped. They didn't make us invincible. Williams made notes. For the historical record, why did you do it? What motivated you to develop this modification? My friend Henderson, my driver, he died because we couldn't see the panther that killed him. I got tired of watching friends burn, so I found a way to see what was coming. That's all. That's all. Williams looked up. Sergeant, you revolutionized armored warfare with a 6-inch piece of salvaged glass. That's not all. That's extraordinary. But Granger didn't feel extraordinary. He felt tired. Bone-deep tired from 18 months of installing mirrors, training crews, calculating survival rates. The war was over, but the weight remained. Can I ask you something, sir? Of course. Do you think it mattered, all of it? The mirrors, the training, the modifications, or were we just postponing the inevitable? Williams was quiet for a moment. I can't answer that philosophically, but I can tell you statistically mirror-equipped crews had a 78% survival rate through the European campaign. Non-equipped crews, 41%. You didn't postpone the inevitable. You changed the odds. And in war, odds are everything. 78%. That meant more than 1,500 tankers had survived who statistically should have died. 1,500 men going home, having families, living lives. But it also meant 22% more than 400 men died, despite the mirrors. 400 Hendersons and Pattersons and Morrisons, whose names would appear on casualty lists and memorial walls. Thank you, sir, Granger said, for the numbers. It helps to know. Williams saluted and left. Granger remained in the depot yard, surrounded by silent tanks watching stars appear in the European sky. The war was over. But the wait would never end. June 12, 1945. Fort Knox, Kentucky. Granger stood in the Patton Museum of Cavalry and Armor, looking at an M4 Sherman that had been preserved as a combat veteran. The placard read, "This Sherman tank, equipped with the Granger Auxiliary Rearview Mirror System, participated in 17 engagements and destroyed 9 German tanks. Crew survival rate 100%. Inside the turret mounted at the loader station was a 6-inch rearview mirror from a 1938 Citroën, preserved forever as a piece of military history. They're naming it after you officially," a voice said behind him. Colonel Hayes, promoted after the war, walked up beside him. The Army Ordnance Board is designating it the Granger Mirror M1945. It'll be standard equipment on all American tanks going forward. The Korean tank crews will have them. The next generation will have them. Your field improvisation is now permanent doctrine. Henderson should be here to see this, Granger said quietly. He is. Every time a tank crew survives because they saw danger coming, Henderson's there. That's his monument, not marble or bronze. Living men. Granger touched the Sherman's hull, felt the cold metal, remembered the heat inside Kentucky Girl during battle, the smell of cordite and fear sweat, the sound of Henderson's last scream. I kept a promise, he said. I made sure other drivers wouldn't die the way he did, but it doesn't feel like enough. It never does. Victory always costs more than we want to pay, but you paid it forward. That matters. Hayes handed him a small wooden box. Inside was a metal bronze star with Valor device and a citation. For extraordinary technical innovation under combat conditions, resulting in the preservation of American lives and enhancement of combat effectiveness. I don't want a medal, sir. I want Henderson back. Then take the medal for him. Let it represent what his death purchased. Because without his sacrifice, you wouldn't have had the motivation to perfect the mirror. His death had meaning. Don't diminish that. Granger pinned the medal to his uniform, felt its weight. Not heavy enough to balance 400 dead tankers. Never would be. But it was acknowledgement. Recognition that improvisation mattered. That field solutions could change warfare. That a sergeant with a salvaged mirror could save more lives than a battalion of replacements. August 15, 1945. Japan surrendered. World War II ended. Granger was discharged on September 3, 1945. He returned to civilian life carrying wounds that weren't visible nightmares about fire survivors' guilt that wouldn't fade the constant calculation of who lived because of his mirrors and who died despite them. He opened an auto repair shop in Louisville, hung a rearview mirror on the wall from a Citroen salvaged from depot stocks before he left Europe. Under it, a small placard, in memory of driver Roy Henderson, Kentucky girl, KIA, September 12, 1944. He taught me to look behind. Tank crews visited sometimes, veterans who'd used Granger mirrors in combat. They'd shake his hand, tell stories of engagements where the mirror-spotted flanking Panthers saved their crews. They'd thank him. He'd redirect credit to Henderson to all the drivers and loaders and gunners who'd died testing whether geometry could defeat German steel. The years passed. Korea erupted new war, new tanks, but the Granger mirrors remained standard. Vietnam followed. Then Desert Storm. Generations of American tankers used enhanced rear visibility as basic equipment, not knowing the name of the sergeant who'd invented it with salvaged French glass. April 12, 2003, Louisville, Kentucky. Walter Granger was 82 years old. The auto shop had closed 15 years earlier. He lived alone, surviving on military pension and Social Security. His hands shook from age, not adrenaline. But the nightmares remained, Henderson burning Tommy, screaming the endless calculation of survival rates and kill ratios. A young man knocked on his door, 20-something wearing Army dress uniform, Master Sergeant stripes. Mr. Granger. I'm Master Sergeant David Patterson. I serve in an M1 Abrams tank battalion. My grandfather served under Lieutenant Morrison in World War II. He was your loader replacement after Henderson died. Granger remembered young Patterson, 18 years old, terrified but determined. Your grandfather survived. Yes, sir. Made it home. Had a family. My father, then me. 3 generations of tankers. All because Grandpa looked in a mirror you installed and saw a Panther coming. Patterson handed him a photograph. It showed an elderly man in a wheelchair surrounded by children and grandchildren. 15 people. 3 generations. Grandpa passed away last month. His last request was that I find you and say thank you. He wanted you to know his life, our family, exists because of what you did. That mirror didn't just save him. It saved all of us. Granger looked at the photograph, counted faces. 15 people who existed because a scared loader had glanced in a mirror and called out contact in time. How many others? He asked quietly. Sir, how many other families from tankers who survived because of the mirrors? Patterson pulled out a folder. The Army Historical Center estimates approximately 1,700 World War II tankers survived engagements they statistically should have lost, attributable to the Granger mirror modification. Most had families. Conservative estimates suggest your modification resulted in 12,000 direct descendants, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren who exist because their ancestors survived. 12,000 people. Living, breathing, having families of their own, all stemming from a 6-inch piece of salvaged glass. And the ones who died, Granger asked. Despite the mirrors, Patterson's face grew solemn. 423 confirmed KIA in mirror-equipped tanks during World War II. Their names are on the memorial wall at Fort Knox, next to your Sherman tank display. 423. Granger had carried that number for 58 years. Knowing it exactly was somehow worse and better simultaneously. Thank you for telling me, he said, about your grandfather, about all of it. Patterson saluted. "Sir, the Army wanted me to give you this." He handed over a framed certificate. Presidential Unit Citation. Recognition for Technical Innovation, dated 2003. 60 years late, Granger said with a thin smile. "Better late than never, sir. The Army doesn't forget its innovators." After Patterson left, Granger sat in his living room holding the photograph of a family that existed because a kid had looked in a mirror. He thought about Henderson, who'd never had children, about Tommy and Steve and Danny and all the others who'd died before the mirrors could save them. The mathematics were clear: 12,000 lives created versus 423 lost. The equation was overwhelmingly positive, but math couldn't capture the weight of 423 names, the letters to families, the memorial services, the empty chairs at Christmas dinners. Victory always costs more than we want to pay. May 3, 2009. Walter Granger died peacefully in his sleep at age 88. His obituary mentioned military service, Bronze Star technical innovations in tank warfare. The funeral was attended by 437 people. Veterans, descendants of veterans' tank crews from 3 wars, and military historians documenting his legacy. At Fort Knox, they installed a permanent exhibit, The Granger Mirror: How One Sergeant Changed Armored Warfare. The centerpiece was Kentucky Girl's salvage turret mirror, still mounted at the loader's station, positioned so visitors could look through it and see what Granger had seen. On the wall beside the exhibit, 423 names every tanker who died in mirror-equipped Shermans during World War II. And at the top, in larger letters, Driver Roy Henderson, KIA, September 12, 1944, the first sacrifice for sight. The exhibit closes with Granger's own words recorded in 1989 for the Army Oral History Project. "People call it innovation. I call it desperation. I was tired of burying friends. So I found a mirror and figured out an angle." That's not heroism, that's just refusing to die blind. Henderson paid the price for that refusal. Thousands lived because of it. But I'd trade every medal, every recognition, every descendant who exists because of that mirror. I'd trade it all to have Henderson back for one more day. To tell him it mattered. That his death purchased something. That he wasn't just another casualty statistic, but the catalyst for change. I hope he knew. I hope somewhere in those last seconds he understood his death would save others. That's the debt I've been trying to pay for 65 years, and I still don't think I've paid enough. The mirror hangs in the museum today. French glass chrome frame mounted at a 43-degree angle, small enough to hold in 2 hands, light enough to carry without effort, and heavy enough to change the mathematics of survival for generations of tankers who never knew the name of the sergeant who'd salvaged it from a dead family's car and turned it into salvation. If you believe their names should be remembered, if you believe Henderson and Granger and all 423 dead tankers deserve more than museum displays and statistical footnotes, share this story. Write a name in the comments. Any name. Soldier, civilian, ancestor, friend. Anyone who deserves to be remembered for the price they paid. Because memory is the only monument that matters, and the only way to honor sacrifice is to ensure it's never forgotten. They built their tanks with steel, but they survived with mirrors, and they're remembered with gratitude. That's the legacy. Not perfect, not clean, but honest. And sometimes honesty is the only honor the dead can claim and the living can offer.